is absolutely wild as Vern Gagne's all-star wrestling goes coast to coast and continent to continent. The greatest wrestlers in the world.
He may be an apprentice carpenter, but I guarantee you he is a seasoned ring veteran.
I've been hit with bar stools, bar rags, barmaids.
I'm talking to you.
They're scared that Hulkamania's still running wild. Oh, yeah. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I gotta feed them.
And take a look at Jesse the Body in real life.
Open your hand once, if you would.
You want to see it?
This is absolutely unbelievable. Totally, completely out of control.
He's coming in over the top. Hey! Look out!
All right, we're going to cut the crap. We're going to go straight to the promoting, guys, because the biggest question that I had was the definition and how they were talking about, I've been hit by bar rags. If you are a member of our pinfall membership on this week's Back to Ringside, which is going to drop tomorrow, I mean, at least I hope, we will have an update about the bar rags and something that involves one of our pinfall members. I haven't even told you this, Mick, but we have a continuation. We may have a resolution to the bar rag conversation. If you're a member of the pinfall for $4.99 a month, you get our Back to Ringside, one of the exclusive features, and we will find out the conclusion to, I mean, it's bigger than what's in Capone's vault, right? Like, this is the biggest thing ever to happen in the history of the world.
This is incredible. You know, I'm so excited. Hang on a minute. I just want to make sure I'm all right. For $4.99 a month, you're going to get schooled on bar rags. Now, what more do you want for $4.99 a month? Seriously. I mean, you thought apparently that it was just a rag that you cleaned off a bar with, but apparently there's more to it.
I got nothing.
No, I'm being serious. I've got the answer. Thanks to one of our pinfall members. I'm not going to tell you who. I'm not going to tell you how. I'm not going to tell you when. I'm not going to tell you why. But you got to tune in. $4.99 a month. You guys going to be blown away.
Must-see TV has a new definition.
Hell yeah.
Brought to you in living color.
That's right. Joe, this is like Sesame Street. One of these is not like the other. Twins hat, professional.
Well, wait a
Some
minute.
of us work for a living.
God.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, for $4.99, join our pinfall. It actually is a lot of fun. If you want to buy Slick Mick merchandise and AWA Unleashed merchandise, go to our brand new TeePublic store. And I'm not going to get deep into it because I know we got a lot of things to get to. Let's dive in, unless we got more nonsense to get into. But I was just really excited about the bar rag thing.
Chris, this whole show is nonsense. What are you talking about?
That's true. That's true.
So let's get into the nonsense.
I might even enjoy tomorrow's show better than today's. Bar rags us. You know,
I know. So we would cut shitty promos, but we would also be shitty workers. We are going to talk about people who were good wrestlers, but shitty promos. Is that safe to say, or maybe just rough around the edges when it comes to?
Yeah.
That's probably very harsh, honestly, on my part. I probably shouldn't have said that.
Let's just say that the promos were not their strongest point.
Yeah, they struggle. That's kind of mean to say that, so I apologize.
We got a couple other caveats too. First of all, a lot of these guys, they were just starting out in the business.
That's
they
true.
hadn't gotten their feet wet. And a promo style is something that takes a while to develop. The other thing is a character takes a while to develop.
That's true. Yeah.
These guys, for the most part, were baby faces, although there were some heels. You have to take a while to evolve into your niche.
Mm-hmm.
We got a few people on the list that absolutely fit that descriptor. And again, we're talking AWA, not what they did later in their career or where they went on to, but their time in the AWA when their promos were on, you might have had to take a no-dose. But let's interesting list, and we put the three of our heads together, which still amounted to nothing, 3 times 0.
Yep.
And we came up with this list. So good stuff, fun stuff.
Yeah, and for the record, these are ones that we all, like you said, they were AWA runs. And kind of correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but when you were talking about the babyface promos, it's harder to cut a promo as a babyface when you're first starting out. I think because of the heel, because the old thing was if you couldn't cut a promo, they put somebody with you that could talk.
That is so true. And I think when we look at this list, Chris, you're going to see that a lot of times the baby faces, they had a tough row to hoe, but the heel is the one who put the asses in the seats for the feud. You didn't have to necessarily deliver a great baby face promo because the heel was going to do the sell job for you. So interesting list.
Yeah. Early in my career at the AWA, Vern Gagne stated to me that it was so much more difficult to be a babyface and deliver a good babyface promo than it is a heel promo. And it makes sense if you think about it. It's easier to get people to hate you than it is to like you. It's just, it takes more work to get people to like you.
And Joe, you and I talked beforehand. In this day and age, it's totally flip-flopped. You know, are there any baby faces anymore? Yeah, they are. They're the heels.
When did it become? I know that, you know, Mick, you kind of, you know, when you were a kid, and Joe, did you guys find it was more fun to boo the heels? Because I know you're a big Bockwinkel guy, and I'm fascinated by that story, as how you kind of, you know, morphed that into becoming a friend of his. When did the whole cheering the bad guy thing start? Did that start before you guys became fans?
No. You mean in general?
Yeah.
I think Road Warriors. I think if you're going to point to anything, that was what kind of turned the business around, because the Road Warriors were supposed to be killer heels. And I guess maybe Hogan before that, when he came into the AWA, they wanted desperately for him to be a heel. And it just
was that when he was doing like the whole cape thing and the whole and
he had Johnny Valiant with him, and people, he wanted to cheer this guy. He was different. They wanted to cheer him, and so they did.
You can boo him now. You can boo him.
But I think '84, the Road Warriors was probably about the time in the AWA where you started to see it.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, Mick, and that's one name that I think could have been included into this list, and that is an early Hulk Hogan. I mean, if you take a look at even after Valiant, when Valiant was here, and it was for a very short time, Hogan didn't talk. He just stood there, his big, massive self. When he first started to become the incredible Hulk Hogan in the AWA, his promos were not good.
No.
They just weren't. In fact, I'm going to add Hulk Hogan to the list, or at least, for that very short period of time. It didn't take long. I mean, we know the rest is history, what he turned into in the business. So.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the list. And Chris, put him up random. And, if you voted for him, you put his name in, then own up to it, as they say.
Oh, no.
All right.
All the credit, none of the blame. That's how I roll.
Opinions are there.
Laurent Susi. Tremendous amateur wrestler. Vern brought him into the AWA with great hype. His promos, they could have knocked the buzzard off a shit wagon. They were so incredibly dull. He didn't get a chance, I guess, really to establish himself in the AWA. But when your claim to fame for your running a promotion is that Bobby Heenan made fun of your name, Laurent Susi, that was about it for him. I guess he's a professional beekeeper in Wisconsin right now. But the promos that I remember him delivering, even as they were introducing him into the business, were the drizzling shits. And, again, great amateur wrestler, technically sound, never made it as a pro.
My first question for you, Mick, is who was worse, Laurent Susi or Brad Rheingans. And I bring up Brad just from, outstanding amateur careers. Brad translated into a great worker in the ring. Susi left pretty quick, but if you were to take both of them in their, I hate to say prime of their career for doing promos, but who is worse? Who is worse?
Loren Susi makes Brad Rheingans look like Mad Dog Vachon.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I mean,
well, where did the term drizzling shits come from anyway? And I'm not saying it's Brad Rheingans. This was not like some sort of like connection.
I think it started when this podcast began.
That's exactly what had happened. You can pinpoint the date. We move on to Brad Rheingans, and this was interesting because
that was a serious question too.
Well, look it up along with your bar rags, and we'll do a double header. Brad Rheingans. All three of us put Brad on this list, and believe me, we don't dare denigrate the wrestling skills of Brad Rheingans.
He's a legit badass motherfucker right there.
Oh my God. To a man, anybody that was in the ring with Brad would say his strength was incredible. He would throw around tree limbs and tree trunks and everything else in his workouts. Great wrestler. Had a good run in the AWA. He was very, very popular. Had some matches with Rick Martel, with Backlund, but when it came to cutting a promo, Brad wasn't quite there, and to say the least. And I think he depended a lot of times on the heel to carry the weight of putting asses in the seats.
Yeah, there were a couple of promos that that were all right. He got animated when he got all pissed off and so forth, but his overall body of work on the mic, it just left, something was left on the table pretty much every time. But yeah, Mick, his in-ring work, second to none.
I feel that if there were, you go back and you look at some of the missed opportunities, I know, kind of the things you can go back and rebook. I feel like if you have the ability of a Brad Rheingans, you put him in a heel stable with a manager, I feel like he could have just been presented as a monster. And I mean, that could have been money right there with Brad Rheingans. I mean, you talk about being somebody that I feel like he just had that real edge to him, being a legit top-notch, like real wrestler.
He was, and Vern could have utilized him to the hilt, put him with Bobby Heenan. I have said that for years.
Yes.
And all Brad had to do was stand there, and Bobby could refer to him as, you want a guy with a real amateur wrestling background. You're not talking Vern Gagne. You're talking this man here, Brad Rheingans, but the ball was dropped. So, hey, but he had a good career. He did.
I find it intriguing and interesting why they didn't try to put him with the manager. I mean, everybody knew that Brad had a tough time cutting promos as a baby face. So why not stick him with somebody? That's what was done back in the day. But for whatever reason,
is it because he was like, is it because Vern didn't want to take the USA? Well, he did that with Patera though.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so,
they
kind of shoots out.
They did it with Patera, but Patera was more of a weightlifter. Remember, he was the big power guy.
Yeah.
So you associate Patera with weightlifting in the Olympics. Brad Rheingans is a pure wrestler, and I don't think Vern wanted the pure wrestlers. It was a long way from the Kurt Angle days. I think Vern wanted a great American hero.
Okay.
All right.
I was just curious, kind of as we were doing that. All right, I'm going. I don't have everything loaded. I'm going one by one here, guys, just to try and maybe streamline it a little bit.
Billy Redcloud.
Right. Yep, Billy Redcloud. This is before your guys' time, before most people's. The late Billy Redcloud. Native Minnesotan, lived in the Twin Cities. I believe he went to Roosevelt High School. Great technical wrestler, although I would say even his in-ring style, unless you gave him a great opponent, He was very slow and very methodical. There was nothing very flashy about Billy Redcloud until the finish, when he went into the stereotypical war dance and so on and so forth. He could not cut a promo to save his soul. He was so deadpan and so flat. The admiration for Billy Redcloud, I think, was his Native American roots and the fact that he was a babyface in babyface era. But it took the guys like Mad Dog Vachon, Dusty Rhodes, Dick Murdoch, heels at the time, to get Billy Redcloud over. When he was in a match, like a chain match with Mad Dog Vachon, great stuff, gangbusters. He could not cut a scintillating promo to save his ass.
I do remember Billy Redcloud's promos, and I agree with your assessment 100%. And also on his in-ring work. The whole stereotypical Native American or Indian, whatever's the right term to use nowadays, that was just so phony. I mean, Wahoo used it, Billy Redcloud used it. You go over to the Japanese wrestlers, and there was always salt involved. It's like, come on, pro wrestling, you can get a little bit more imagination.
Well, I mean, it's easy to take that character and stereotype it based on their real heritage, or maybe even not their real heritage. I mean, it's based on how they look. You can profile them and stereotype them, and you put it in, and it was probably the easiest thing, low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. It was, and that's the key, was you don't dare do it today because everybody's all over it, and PC and PG and everything else. But yeah, Billy Redcloud, wonderful guy, down to earth, but his wrestling or his promos were just, all right. Well, you speak of the devil. And Chris, this is interesting because in our kind of pre-show discussions, you talked about the fact that you put Bob Backlund on based on his WWF interviews. And I'm assuming you're talking his babyface interviews, because the Mr. Backlund character, at least, had some fire to it. What you saw in the WWF was what you saw in the AWA, only even on a lesser scale. Bob was not great at cutting a babyface promo. Again, you're all-American guy, wrestling skills second to none, but the promos were just flatlined. And he, again, depended on the heel to sell the tickets.
Well, Mick, we witnessed his, you could probably say it's his best heel promo at Vern Gagne's week, where he just went up there, and that was as strange of a situation that I've ever witnessed at a funeral. Hell, I'd even say just in general life terms. I mean, talk about inappropriate, unexpected. That was a strange moment when he went up there.
He was, I mean, there's been talk about Bob Backlund over the years, but, Bob is always coming up with bizarre stuff. And I think, sadly, there has been some talk about his faculties kind of diminishing over the years. The Vern Gagne funeral situation was just like, are you kidding me? But
is it a shoot?
Yeah, whether it was a shoot or whatever it was, squirt gun, cap gun, or cannon, not at when a guy is being eulogized by his son. The interesting thing about Backlund, when he became a heel in WWE, he took that heel role seriously. If a kid wanted his autograph, Bob Backlund would make the kid go through all 50 states and name the state capitals, or he wouldn't sign an autograph. So he believed the gimmick. But again, Chris, you said it and you admitted it. You said you didn't see him in the AWA. Yeah, you did, because you saw him in the early WWF. So
well, and I just went back and I checked the messages. I want to make sure that I put it there correctly. I did not put him on the list for AWA because I saw his WWF one. I'm like, I don't want to include the guys that I didn't see. But I'm also partial to Bob Backlund because when I first went to school at North Dakota State, I had no idea that Bob Backlund had gone there.
Sure.
And I went up to the what they called the Bison Sports Arena, the BSA, which was the old athletic facility. And upstairs where they trained for wrestling, I saw Bob Backlund's name. And it was just like, holy shit, Bob Backlund went to India Shoes. So then I did some more research, and I have an immense amount of respect for the athletic ability and what he did for the state of Minnesota, what he did for North Dakota State University, my alma mater. But yeah, I didn't see the AWA run. The early WWF stuff, nah. The Mr. Backlund, like his run with Bret Hart, loved it.
Yeah.
His run with Bret Hart in 94, 95-ish, great stuff. WWF, but yeah,
and terrific wrestler. Terrific.
Oh, great
wrestler.
Great.
All right, let's keep moving. The guys
Okay.
put you to sleep besides us when they were cutting a promo.
Oh,
Not
okay.
as quickly as we'll put you under, but
We could call this the Tranquilizer episode.
that's right. All right, Christopher.
I don't know who this guy is supposed to be, but
All right.
what the Sam fuck is this picture?
That is called a very small, low resolution image that got blown up, and AI said, "I'm going to really fuck with this guy."
This is like create a wrestler in a 1980s Nintendo game.
Well,
I mean, it looks like the mask without the makeup.
well, now that we buried him, that's,
Who the fuck is this?
that would
Jim
be.
Brunzell.
No.
Look at the JB on his tights there,
It
pal.
can't be. I mean, that's like a 7 and a B. Like it's like an apartment number from New York.
No.
This
No,
is a prime example of AI still has a little ways to go.
That would be our friend Yumpin Yimmy.
I'm sorry.
And,
I love you. You're such good people. Put
I
this
did
picture.
not put him on the list because I still associate with Jim Brunzell, let alone burying the picture.
I'm so sorry. I didn't pick the
no,
picture. I just put it up.
Hey, that's okay. Jim Brunzell.
I gotta mute my. I gotta mute.
Every once in a while, Jim would show some fire in his AWA promos. Greg showed more fire on a limited basis. The high flyers never got like over the top screaming and yelling when they cut a promo, but they got intense, especially Greg, if he's referring to Bockwinkel or Heenan or whoever. Jimmy was kind of, a step below that. He would talk a little bit and he would get his point across, but there was not a lot of fire and brimstone in the promos for Jumpin' Jim Brunzell. Your take, Joe?
Well, I put Brunzell on the list for everything that you just said. I could have put Greg in there, but I've got more memorable interviews of Greg than I do of Jim. Brunzell, just great guy, fantastic worker. The High Flyers, to me, one of the great tag teams of all time. But when thinking back when they would come on and do a promo, that would be the time where I could go and get a snack. It just didn't draw me in. I already knew I was going to the matches. I didn't need to watch it. I'd rather watch the East-West Connection promo,
Right.
than the High Flyers promo at the time. So yeah, Jim just, to me, it just wasn't quite there. I wonder what he would have done with a heel promo.
I think he would have been another guy for the Heenan stable. He teamed up with Bockwinkel in Japan as a heel tag team from the United States. I think Jimmy says it the best himself. When he had his interview, his debut in the WWF, Vince McMahon, standing off to the side, shook his head and said, "Oh God, we got another Backlund." And I think that kind of says it all right there.
Yep.
Who would have made the better heel, Greg or Jim?
Greg.
Okay, I think that's the vibe that I got. I was just kind of curious.
Still wish, turn back the clocks. I still wish they'd have turned Greg heel.
It would have been an easy turn, and that's a compliment to Greg.
Yep.
Would Greg have done it?
No, not here. Well, you know what? Think back to one of the Super Clashes, Joe, when they booed him against Ron Garvin.
Yeah.
Greg hated it. He just did not want to get booed.
But Greg hated it because he was the baby face.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't going to happen. Vern wasn't going to let it happen. But I'll say after Brunzell left and the whole Camp Slaughter gimmick was an abysmal failure, at that point, you're not going to put the belt, the heavyweight championship on Greg. He had the international television championship, but you're not going to put the big strap on him. So go heel. Just do it. What the hell? What at that point in the AWA, what do you have to lose? In about 1986-ish, 1987?
You might find lightning in a bottle with something that people didn't expect. Maybe something that people had been wanting.
You know what I would have loved? That Greg Gagne, Kurt Hennig tag team, second generation, and they both turn on the old men. I think that would have been red hot, both Minnesota guys. But hey, as you said, I don't think Vern would have ever gone for that, Joe.
And you could have gone those guys versus people that wanted to respect the heritage. I mean, they could have said, screw this. We're the new, we're the young bucks. We're the, the hot new kids on the block. So, this is ours.
Yep. All right. Who is our next stellar? This is what's interesting to me.
Is this Alec Baldwin?
Alec Baldwin on the juice. This is what is interesting to me. The guy who put his name on the list is his biggest supporter among the three of us. Such a supporter that they call him Bike for short, as in, the jockstrap. That's Bull Bullinski. And Chupik, this has always been one of your go-to guys. Explain yourself.
He was a go-to guy for me as a youngster for two reasons. First of all, Bullinski, being a young Pole, that automatically attracted me to him. Outside of Bullinski, at the end of his promos, they just were a snooze fest. I'm sorry. They didn't do it for me. And looking back, his matches weren't anything to write home about. I'm not going to put him in the same category as a Bob Backlund and a Brad Rheingans. But, and I know this is good workers, bad promos. We've talked about it, Mick. How long of a run did he have? I mean, he was a jobber. He was like a Jake Milliman before Jake was, to me.
What's interesting about Bullinski, they put him with Crusher as a tag team. They had to. And he came in at the time of a nationwide trucker strike, and he played the role of the out-of-work trucker. He was every man. And he would come up. Bullinski had a massive pot belly. And he came out in jeans with the belly hanging over the edge of the jeans, and his promos, were absolutely flat. But he was supposed to connect with the fans because he was just like them. He was like your neighbor next door, out there in the backyard grilling. Outside of Bullinski, and I've mentioned this before, the only memorable promo I remember from this guy. He came in and he had like a burn on his face. And Marty O'Neill said, Bull, what happened? And he says, Marty, I got to tell you, I'm going to tell all you kids, never play with matches around a gas stove. And this is the promo that this guy, his public service announcement, don't play with matches around a gas stove. Never light a fart, kids. It's not good for you.
It doesn't work the same way in the cartoons.
Just because the Roadrunner and Coyote did it doesn't mean you should.
That's right. So Bull Bullinski, Frank Shields, he had a couple-year run in the AWA and then instantly forgotten.
Okay, so I gotta ask. So you bring it up to me, to explain myself. Yet you agree with me.
Well, the only reason I say explain yourself is because you've been kissing Bullinski's ass on so many podcasts over the years. Have I ever once said this guy's the greatest? I'd love to ski at the end of his name. No.
You brought up earlier in this little part about when he tagged with the Crusher.
All right, well, Crusher.
So that gives you the explanation. Next.
You should have known Crusher ski.
I'm going to debate Bull Bullinski with you on this podcast.
Crushki and Bullski.
Bullinski.
Oh God, no! Oh, you're the greatest. All right. Who's up next on our Hall of Heroes?
You know what? I think I have to. You know what? We'll just we'll do this one because I have to reload the picture that I had.
All right.
You didn't see the one that I put up, did you?
No.
Okay.
Let's take a look and see who we got.
Sorry.
What's the saying? What Otto wants, Otto gets.
Yeah, well, let me tell you something about Otto Wanz. We know the whole story. We're not going to be labored at the buying of the championship. This podcast is about promos. And Otto Wanz, you know, he comes out there, you know, he's wearing whatever, you know, the Austrian hat and the you know, the jeans and everything else. I think his thick accent added to the fact that his promos just didn't fly, but he really didn't. He just couldn't put a sentence together, and I don't mean to denigrate him because of the foreign language. There was not a lot of fire in Otto Wanz, even when Bobby Heenan attacked him, and the Heenan family worked him over on television. Otto's claim to fame was that he could tear phone books in half, not cut promos. And for the very short time he was in the AWA, yeah, he did well. He bought his way into the title. But my God, his promos, I would never buy a ticket to see Otto Wanz. In Europe, it was a different story from what I understand. The guy was over like gangbusters. AWA promos, the shits.
I agree 100%. Excuse me. When he did the phone book ripping thing, I think that helped to get him over, but only because of the time period and for All-Star Wrestling. Because a typical AWA All-Star Wrestling show was 5 squash matches and 5 interviews. Mm-hmm. So when you had a special type of a segment, it became bigger than the promo, bigger than the angle. It was something to watch. Take away the phone book ripping. He could have very well been booed because his promos, probably top 3 worst promos for me overall. Just horrible. And I know this is, good or great workers and bad promos, but you were right. When he wrestled here, oh my God, horrible matches. Horrible.
In Europe, he was over. Here, his finish, the steamroller or whatever he called, the rolling steamroller. But that was about it for Otto Wanz. And I just don't get it. And I got to tell you that there were probably 15,000 at the St. Paul Civic Center in August of '82 that were absolutely stunned out of their shorts when Nick put this guy over, including Bobby Heenan, by the way. So there you go.
Did you say that they did not tell Bobby what was going to happen?
That's what the story is, because they knew Bobby would never go along with it, let alone the fact that Wanz was buying a championship. He didn't earn his stripes in the AWA.
So obviously Nick knew, but when did he know? Was it right before the match? Was it something that
I can't believe that, Joe. I don't think it would be right before the match. Nick had such a tie-in to the office, and he's on top as the champ, and he and Vern were like this. I think Vern probably said, this is what we're going to do. This is a financial deal. Don't tell Bobby because he'll never go for it. That would be my guess.
I wonder if Nick got a part of that $50,000 that Otto paid.
Interesting. I don't know.
That's a good question.
All right.
What's next?
Who is next? All right, here we go. Chris, you mentioned on a previous podcast that you can't imagine Dino Bravo, a black-haired baby face.
I can't. Like my Dino Bravo days are when he was the French Canadian with Frenchie Martin in the WWF.
Dino was a big, strong guy. I mean, he wasn't all that tall, but my God, he was built like a brick shithouse, and every bit as powerful. He had the French Canadian accent, which again, sad to say, is kind of a detriment when you're wrestling in the United States. And we'll talk about another guy that had that. Bravo, he didn't show a lot of fire. And again, it took a guy like Jerry Blackwell to get Dino over, I think, as a baby face. They had a body slam challenge. And, Blackwell, nobody's ever slammed me. I'm near 500 pounds. Dino Bravo, you don't have a chance. So they played that feud out a long, long time. I don't think Dino, he was a popular babyface, but I think he really caught fire again when he went to WWF and, changed his style. But in the AWA, there just was not a lot to his promos. They were pretty bland, and it took the heel to get it over.
Another prime example of how it's easier to get somebody to hate you than to like you.
Yeah, and the demise that Dino Bravo suffered up in Montreal, terrible, right in front of his kid, from what I understand. Sad. But again, when you're looking all-time great AWA promos, do not look up Dino Bravo. He ain't gonna be there.
No,
he ain't gonna be there.
Ain't gonna be there.
Ain't gonna be there.
That's right.
Well, let's go into this because I think this is who you were referring to.
Absolutely. And we've talked about this, and Joe, I know you have.
The young Scott Baio. Look at that.
Look at him there. Yeah, Chachi, you jerk. Rick Martel, in-ring skills, phenomenal. Tremendous worker. I think that the most underrated AWA champion of all time. His matches with Nick were off the charts. The feud with Stan Hansen. But again, was it the accent, Joe, that held him back when he was cutting a promo?
In Rick's case, I don't think that it was his accent as much as what I've stated 2, 3, 4 times already. He didn't have. How do I explain? He didn't have like the Hulk Hogan approach to being a babyface or somebody that had a character. It was just Rick Martel, this guy who is trying to get you to like him and cheer for him. And it was easy to do, but in the presentation of it, in his promos, paint drying, watching a mosquito fly around your head. I mean, it just wasn't there. Fast forward to the model Rick Martel, and I think that is a prime example of what I've been saying and what Greg Gagne said to me. Easy to get somebody to hate you. It only takes one sentence, one word, one whatever. Much more difficult to get somebody to like you. And Rick Martel is an epitome of that.
He came into the AWA, he was an established star nationally. When he came into the AWA, he had the good looks. Certainly, they needed somebody to take the place of Hogan when Hogan left as champ. It's interesting. I'm thinking about this. You take Hogan, Mad Dog, and Crusher as 3 over-the-top AWA babyface talents with miraculous promos. The rest of the AWA babyface roster is kind of delivering the same type of, not monotone necessarily, but the promos aren't that different. There's nothing that stands out. Unless you were a major character, they were all kind of the same.
Another guy that I could add to this list, and I hate to say this, but Vern Gagne.
Oh, yeah.
His promos were apple pie, hot dogs, Chevrolet. I mean, but there was just nothing to them. I'll equate a lot of the guys in the Vern Gagne category that I just brought up with, like, if you're watching any professional sport and the athlete gets interviewed after a game, it's just the same stuff spewing over and over and over again, just said in a slightly different way. You might have an animated character like Neon Deion Sanders back in the day that is just over the top, but and maybe it was planned that way, or that Vern wanted it that way, that the baby faces were just an average guy that you could talk to sitting at a bar that I've never been to before. Something along those lines. But you brought up the Road Warriors earlier about where it changed. What about Hogan sort of changed the babyface promo approach?
Well, here's a question that I've got though. How much advance notice did Vern get that some of these guys were going to be leaving, like Hogan, Mad Dog, like these big time baby faces? How much advance warning did Vern have that these guys were going to be leaving?
Not a lot. I think Hogan, I think, gave him advance notice, but then, it was kind of like, fuck you. I'm not going to, keep my commitments. Jesse up and bolted. He was gone. I think the only one that Mad Dog and maybe Bobby Heenan treated Vern with the respect. Mad Dog wanted to finish out his dates. So did Bobby Heenan. Talked to Vern well in advance and said, this is what my plans are. And they were gone. It was a period of upheaval, and getting back to the point that, we were talking about, it's got to be the Vern Gagne philosophy. Legitimizing wrestling with guys that would come out and just not rant and rave in their promos, except for the handful of guys that were characters, real characters in the business. Everybody else was just kind of, deliver their promo.
Because here's my question. If Vern knew, and this kind of goes back into the whole, after those guys left, it was a lot of bland baby faces. In my mind, I'm thinking if Vern can anticipate that these guys are leaving, couldn't you in your mind think, okay, who do we have as a heel that we could turn, that could cut good promos, that could kind of fill that spot left by these guys, so we wouldn't have just a bland milquetoast baby face?
What I would say to that, Chris, is it's Vern Gagne that you're talking about.
Okay.
And Vern, for all his wrestling brilliance and business acumen, did not have a lot of foresight, into what was going to be happening in the business. And I think when guys left, I don't even think Vern probably thought these guys are never going to go. I mean, a lot of the guys up and left him, and Vern figured it wasn't going to happen. So he didn't have time to formulate in his mind, hey, this guy's going to leave. We got to flip him. Let's do something with him.
Okay.
I don't think so.
And again, Chris, as I've said before, even if you're a fantastic heel, to then flip that, I'll give you Jerry Blackwell as a prime example, who was a heel who did promos where everybody hated him and wanted to see him get his ass kicked. He went to a baby face, but the promos didn't change.
Right.
Just his opponents changed. And so could it be done? Yeah. But if you're going to take somebody like a Blackwell or another guy who didn't turn, like a Jesse Ventura, and try to make them a baby face, well, but you're taking away what's selling you the tickets. And that is being a heel and people wanting to see your ass get handed to you. So I understand the logic, but there, believe it or not, was rhyme and reason to the way they did things. Right or wrong.
Joe, you made a great point, too, about changing the style. Mad Dog Vachon, the heel, and Mad Dog Vachon, the babyface, still bit a guy's nose and still ran the claws, around his back. Certain guys you could do it with and get them over as a face. Other, the flip-flop wasn't always easy, but I don't think Vern anticipated the losses and
Okay.
didn't have the foresight. That
Because
would
I think today it's just like, okay, when somebody turns heel to babyface to heel, the promos are going to change, the attitude's going to change,
Right.
like everything about them is changed, and it's like, how? Like, there's no consistency. So I think not. I know that they didn't turn the heel to babyface often, or was it the other way around? But regardless, it was more consistent back then, and maybe you guys are saying it meant more than just like doing it on a drop of a dime.
But think about the guys that it worked for. They were the characters: Mad Dog, Crusher, Pompero Firpo, Baron von Raschke. These guys were the over-the-top characters, so they already had this fan base that loves them anyway, just for who they are. Easy transition.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. No, thank you guys. I know a little bit of a sidebar, but I think it's just kind of interesting to get into that. Let's go with this one. I know I'm going to get some shit for it.
You put the guy in the list.
I did.
But
I did.
But I understand it, because again, we're talking about the AWA era and the pre-world champion run.
Yes.
For Curt Hennig. So you go ahead, Chris, explain yourself. I agree with you.
I'm talking about the early, baby face, baby fat Curt Hennig, who was just, the son of the Axe, who was just getting his feet wet. The ability was always there, but until he started to develop that edge, like his teaming with Scott Hall, I think was probably a perfect example of just not having that attitude like he did once we started to see the matches with Nick Bockwinkel in the championship. That's a completely different Curt Hennig. I'm talking about just the very blah, kind of maybe reserved Curt Hennig, but that's, and again, I'm going off of what I remember from my AWA, my very, very limited ability to see the AWA when I was a kid.
Spot on. And I think Joe would agree with this. When he developed the edge, when he turned heel.
Different guy. Different guy.
Totally different guy. And I think Curt, hey, if he was still here, he would admit it. Those early promos of his, oh my God. And he went, even as a babyface a little bit later on, he was relying heavily on Larry the Axe to kind of be the face of the team. What Curt developed into, pardon the expression, was perfect. But I couldn't agree with you more. And this went back even to his early WWF days. His babyface promos were not good.
I'll say it again. It's tough to be a babyface, and it's easy to be a heel. Curt Hennig into Mr. Perfect is a prime example of that. Back in the day, back during this time, it was still, you knew a babyface and you cheered for him. You knew a heel and you booed him.
Yeah.
And so when Curt became Mr. Perfect and everybody hated him, it was easy. Well, first of all, because that was Curt.
Yes. Yeah.
And for the record, loved Curt, one of my all-time favorites and one of my dearest friends in the business back in the day. But that was Curt Hennig. And so it was easy to hate him. So a lot of these guys just fall under the same thing. And during the era that we're talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
Who's up next? And all right. This guy here, Paul Diamond, Tom Boric, Paul Diamond, who teamed up with Pat Tanaka, of course, here in the AWA. They were the champions. Of the two, and again, you're in the dying days of the AWA, so it's tough anyway to get over as a heel, as a babyface, whatever. And this was a heel tag team. Pat Tanaka did the heavy lifting as far as a heel. Promos. Paul Diamond in the ring, a great worker, had charisma, lots of it. But his promos for when he spoke, Joe, I mean, you were there, during that time frame. talk about paint drying on the wall. It just was not there.
Well, that's why they had eventually had Diamond Dallas Page as their manager, which I thought was a very wise move. But it still baffled me during that time why they would let Paul and Pat talk. They were both fantastic workers in the ring. The whole BADD Bad Company was a great gimmick. They came out to Bad Company, the song. It was fantastic. But just shut up. Don't talk. Let Diamond Dallas Page get people to hate you.
Speaking of Pat Tanaka, we'll have him on in a few weeks. I've been texting back and forth with him.
It's about time.
He wants to do it. He's excited.
Love Pat. He's a great guy. We've been trying to get him for a long time. Paul Diamond, Max Moon, who we have tried to get on the podcast one time. I sent him a message and let me put it to you this way. Paul Diamond was none too complimentary about doing this podcast if he wasn't going to get paid to do it. So that was the one and only time we asked him to be on the show.
Okay. Yeah. Good for, you know what, in my 30 plus years of being in media, I've talked to a lot of people. I've never once paid for an interview. I've never paid for an interview, and I'm not planning on paying, because if I can talk to guys like Charles Barkley and Dan Patrick and, Steve Young, guys like that, I don't know. I've never paid for an interview. It's never been my thing, no matter any type of business.
Buddy boy, if we can talk to Barry Darso and Tito Santana and guys like that, that are friends and want to come on and talk old school wrestling, that's fine by me.
Yep. So, and that's not bearing anybody. That's just kind of, if there are some names that people have been asking, kind of a little inside baseball, there are names that people have been asking and we've reached out, but it's a matter of, like the money and thing. Some people would pay for interviews. I've never done it in my entire life. And I can't justify doing it just because I've never done it. It's just a foreign concept to me. That's all.
Couldn't agree with you more. And, we're putting them over, especially a lot of the guys that aren't in the business anymore. We're reliving the memories. Here's a guy that could not cut a babyface promo to save his ass, and that would be Paul Ellering. Look at the beast that is Paul Ellering. I'm going to guess this picture, probably 1976, 1977. Paul was put in a program with Jesse Ventura, a weightlifting competition. So he got over as a babyface, a strong babyface, because first of all, of his Minnesota ties, and secondly, because he's working with Jesse Ventura. And Jesse was over so huge, even then, as a heel. But then Paul would team up with Steve Osenoski. He would team up with Evan Johnson. He was kind of that mix of Minnesota guys that Vern trained that were just there. Did they get a moderate crowd response? Yeah. But when it came to putting asses in the seats on a television promo, no way.
What was it after Paul came back as the manager of the Road Warriors that Crusher started calling him Ellering?
Yes.
Okay. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah. So his early promos were a lot left to be desired. Yet again, I'm going to put it into the babyface heel category type of a thing. When he came back as the manager of the Road Warriors, first of all, I didn't recognize him and believe him that was Paul Ellering.
Yeah.
Because Paul Ellering, the manager, he looked like any normal guy. You take a look at the picture that we had up there, and it's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Totally different looking people. And promo-wise, I mean, we know what he developed into as a manager of the Road Warriors. Easy to be a heel, tough to be a babyface.
A couple of things I've never understood in the business. How Paul Ellering managed to add a D to the Legion of Doom when he was that would go along with Jimmy Hart's Greg the Hammer Valentine, and Adrian Adonis calling him Ace Cowboy Bob Horton.
Maybe he was thinking about Tim Hortons.
Oh, that's what okay. That makes sense.
Okay.
Paul Ellering, maybe now that he's been released from WWE, boy, would it be a kick to get him on the show, though. Great guy.
Well,
Great
you've been messaging with him, though. I mean, I think we just gotta wait a bit.
Okay, yeah. We got any more yet, or are we
Oh no, we got a few more. I was gonna put this up right after Kurt, but I didn't. Magnum SH Scott Hall.
Scott Hall in the AWA, very impressive guy. This is obvious. I mean, in ring, he was a big, tough guy, not the most scientific, a lot of power moves, flashy guy, cut a moderate to whatever babyface promo teaming up with Kurt. And of course, the legendary Colonel De Beers, the feud he had with the Colonel when Colonel accused Scott Hall of using anabolic steroids.
And he was right.
Imagine that. This was far from the Razor Ramon character, Scott Hall back in the AWA 1980s days. Tremendous worker, tremendous look. His promos as a babyface back then just did not do it.
I won't say it again, but I will say very similar to Rick Martel. The babyface promos were nothing, and when they turned into the heel characters, unforgettable. I mean, fantastic gimmicks that they developed into. So maybe that's why I've been accused of being the heel podcaster as it relates to Barry Darsow. It's easy. It's tough to get people to like you, and this is a prime example.
Yeah.
You brought up Barry Darsow.
Yep.
One thing I would say here, if you look back over the record books, an awful lot of guys that Vern Gagne trained into the business turned heel. They started out as a babyface. You look at the Ric Flairs, you look at the Larry Hennings, a lot of Ole Anderson, a lot of guys. Yeah, a lot of guys that Vern trained turned heel once they left the AWA and then came back. So
well, I think that's just the foresight of other people knowing maybe how to use their personalities and get them over as a gimmick. Because the Razor Ramon thing, I think, worked, but when he went to WCW and used his real name, and it was like, "Hey, yo," I mean, like that. You just said those two words,
right,
and that popped the crowd. So, what was better for Scott Hall? Was it Razor or was it his Scott Hall Outsider run? I know this isn't I know this isn't AWA, but I just out of curiosity.
No, that's a tough call too, because he was great at both. Of the two, I preferred Scott Hall NWO because you said, how iconic is that? Hey, yo. And all these
I felt like he was himself, just the whole, like all of the body language. He and Nash played off of each other so well.
Yeah. A great talent, left us too soon, but as a babyface, the promos, might as well listen to Chupik at the Croatian Hall at closing time.
Never been there.
No sense. The words were slurred, and
don't know what you're talking about. I've never been to the Croatian Hall in my life. So you brought up the question of Scott Hall or Razor Ramon. To me, they were the same gimmick. Just when he was the initial Razor Ramon, he was Tony Montana from Scarface.
Yeah.
And Scott said that's who he gimmicked himself after. But they were the same. Scott Hall and Razor Ramon were exactly the same. One just had an accent, sort of like Kofi Kingston. When he had a little run, he was Jamaican, and then all of a sudden Triple H calls him out in the middle of an interview in the ring. Hey, hold on, I thought you were Jamaican.
Oh, one of the great moments ever.
I remember that. Oh my God! Yes, I remember that. All right, we've got 4 more here left, and
all right, let's do them. Oh boy. Steve Osenoski, I hate to do this to Steve because he was a great, solid in-ring worker as a babyface. Not only here on the state of Minnesota, he was a national heavyweight champion in Georgia for Georgia Championship Wrestling back in the day. Eventually, of course, he put on that ninja hood and became Ninja Go. Man of many talents, Steve Osenoski.
Maybe that was supposed to be the push, like Ninja, go.
Away.
Very, very possibly. We love Steve. He's a great guy. Had a great mind for the business. We have wanted to get him on the podcast, and we will. Logistically, it hasn't worked out yet. But again, put him in that Paul Ellering, Evan Johnson, Steve Osenoski mix and match AWA promos from the 1970s into the early 80s. And no, let's let's go in the other room, get a popcorn and a beer, and then somebody else will be on. But
should have been, instead of Ninja Go, it should have been Ninja No.
Ninja No. And poor Steve. My God, when they gave him that gimmick, everybody at ringside knew who he was, and they're chanting Steve-O as this guy's, traipsing around with a ninja outfit on him. So, but we love Steve. Great guy.
Yeah.
All right. Who do we got next?
Joe's just shaking his head. He's like, you'd be Ninja Joe.
Ninja Joe. There we are.
My comment on it is, if you're going to go under a hood, dramatically, or try at least to dramatically change your ring style, and you could. It didn't take a genius to know that was Steve O underneath the hood. I mean,
that's why so many wrestling fans.
Yeah, all you could see.
I know Ninja Go. I know Ninja Go. I know Ninja Go. Steve-O no. Steve-O no. I know Ninja Go.
Yeah.
Hey, they added. They call him Steve-O. They just added a G to his name, and
Steve-O.
That's simple. That's simple. Oh man.
Oh God, I'm sorry, Steve-O. I'm sorry, Steve-O. You gotta come on and set us straight.
All right. We talked about this guy, $1 million body, an attitude that was just horrendous as far as the business is concerned. And again, another guy who in the AWA was a milquetoast babyface at best. And that's the late Tom Zenk. Tom's promos in the AWA were, Joe, I mean, you've explained it very well. Watch the grass grow, watch the paint dry, relied a lot on the heels to get him over. Did a little bit better when he was, became the Z-Man in WCW, and then, of course, his run in WWE. Terrible promo, good in-ring worker, horrible attitude, hated the business. And there you have Tom Zenk in a nutshell.
Tom's one that I think should have been a heel from the get-go.
Yeah.
I think he would have, done better for himself in the business. He just, you brought up his attitude. Tom ruffled some feathers in the business. And I think that's an understatement. So to take that and make him a heel, I think he really would have excelled. And I think his promos would have been better. But alas, he was a babyface and falls into that same category of just easy to get people to hate you, or tough to get them to like you.
Yep.
All right, we've got two more here, guys. I'm going to leave the one that I feel is going to, I know it's going to lead to some discussion, and I know we got less than 10 minutes here, Joe, before you got other things. Here's one that I put on there, and people might say, well, why did you put Jake on there? Looking back on it, again, remember that my era was really the late 80s, early 90s. And part of I know the Team Challenge series gets a lot of shit. And, we've discussed it. But when I was a kid and I saw the Team Challenge series, it was different. It was unique. And I was thinking about this. I'm like, was it unique out of necessity, or was it just unique because you didn't have any other options, which I guess would kind of be the same thing. I put him on there because Jake Milliman, to me, was a bright spot of the Team Challenge Series. The whole turkey on a pole, if nothing else, and the whole give Jake a break. I was such a Jake Milliman fan when I was growing up, and that is real. That's not sitting here doing it for the podcast. I honestly felt the real underdog vibes from Jake Milliman, and I may be the only one in the world that was like, I can look back at the Team Challenge Series with a little and smile about it because it was absurd. It was unique, but I still, and I wonder if people in my generation, the Gen Xers, if we all kind of view it the same way. And that's why I put Jake Milliman on this.
You know, Chris, I agree. First of all, I think it was done out of necessity. They were throwing whatever would stick against the wall at that point. The show being about promos, and not delivering good promos, Jake had an opportunity a couple of times during the Team Challenge Series to talk. Didn't do very well. I interviewed him in Rochester after a show for Saturday Night at Ringside. Poor guy stammered and stammered over his words. But that's what happens when you don't get an opportunity to talk, when that is not your forte. And they're asking you to talk, you got
to have reps. You've got to have reps to get better. It's in anything. You can't just jump in and expect to be. I mean, it's what I tell my 14-year-old. I'm like, you can't expect everything to be perfect the very first time. You got to work at it. You got to sharpen your skills.
And if you're camera shy, and this sounds strange for a wrestler, but if you're camera shy to talk into that microphone anyway, you got those 2 strikes going against you. You have no opportunity to talk. Even George Gadasky, I'm thinking when they put George in the program with the Crusher picked him as a tag team partner. George would cut a couple of promos, but he just wasn't good at it. You need the reps. You need an actual character development that way. So in that sense, for the very limited time, Jake just could not cut a promo, but it's not his fault.
I've said it for years and experienced it time and time again. You talk with somebody just face to face, and they're this very personable, outgoing, animated person. And it's like, you know what? You'd be a great manager, or you'd be great on camera. You put them on a set under the lights and in front of that round lens, and they go for, what the hell?
You made the heart.
Yes, that's how I think about Jake. I can't do that.
Oh my God!
Anyway,
terrific.
My heart goes out to you all. But my point is, you put somebody in front of that lens. It's not easy. If you think it is, just set up your own camera, okay, and concentrate on literally. You're talking to one person, but there's 100 million whatever people. It's not easy to just simply look at and focus on that, as I'm doing right now. It's not easy. And you're 100% right, where you need the repetition. You take a look at a lot of these guys that we brought up, Curt Hennig in his early days, he could have been a heel, and he would have been the shits when he first started. It takes time to get good at whatever it is you're doing.
Joe, you know what I think of the SNR days? I look back at the early tapes of 1988. I'm a cardboard cutout up there. I mean, I am stiff as a board, and I wasn't using a teleprompter, but I was trying to be so professional, ladies and gentlemen. It wasn't until I got loose with this is what I do. I'm going to have some fun with this, and then you find your niche. But you're absolutely right. If you're just, if you're going out there once a year, twice a year, and they say, go out and put this over, it is tough, really tough.
All right, we got just a few minutes here left because Joe, I know you got something else you got to do. You guys can talk about this for a couple minutes.
Call me out, Mick.
I'm going to call you out on it because I saw Wahoo deliver some stellar promos. He didn't scream, but there was an intensity. And a lot of times with Wahoo's promos, they would zoom the camera in on his face, and it was his eyes and what he said, not necessarily, how he was delivering it. His feud with Superstar Graham, he caught some fire in his promos. I'm curious. I want to hear about this, Joe. I have a feeling I understand your point, but you got to work with him hand in glove in the AWA in the kind of the waning years of his career. Why is he on your list for poor promos?
Well, first, I agree with what you said. In his early career, Wahoo did well. But then when he came back to the AWA for the end of his run during the 80s, when I worked with Wahoo, it wasn't there. The believability of Wahoo. I mean, he was 50 years old when he was with the AWA on his second run. Excuse me. Not in the greatest shape, and believe me, I directed a couple of hundred interviews, if not more, of Wahoo, and near the end of the run of his run, we didn't even let Wahoo do the full 2-minute interview, or depending on the time slot or duration of time that we had, Wahoo would be a back-to-back. And it was because he couldn't carry the entire 2 minutes.
What is a back-to-back, Joe, for those that don't know?
You do two wrestlers. You'd have Wahoo come in for a minute, and then he'd leave, and then the Larry Nelson or whatever would say, "Okay, now we're going to bring in Kurt Hennig."
Okay.
Early Wahoo, both in the AWA and then when he was with the NWA and his feuds with Manny Fernandez, I mean, legendary. Mm-hmm. That was great Wahoo, and he did a great promo. But we're talking AWA. I'll give it to you. Early Wahoo is fantastic. The mid-'80s version of Wahoo, dare I say, was a prime example of probably could have hung him up earlier than he did.
And it's interesting because
to Wahoo.
And it's interesting because we talk a lot of guys early cut their better promos later on. For you, it sounds like Wahoo was flipped.
Yeah.
You had two Wahoo McDaniels in the AWA, and they were 15 years apart. When Wahoo first came in, he comes in 1972, I believe, and he's feuding with Billy Graham, and they're doing Indian strap matches, and Wahoo was on fire. Now you got that 15-year time frame before he comes back to the AWA, and he's a part-time wrestler. He's an office guy. Like Joe said, he's 50-some years old. There was no fire, I don't think, left in Wahoo McDaniel. The closest, I think, was when they tried to reignite the Manny Fernandez feud. But by that time, the train really left the station in the AWA.
Exactly. And for that reason, that's why I had to put Wahoo on there. It pains me, because I remember the early Wahoo, but I worked with the later Wahoo. And it just, when we had the run sheets and I saw, okay, there's a Wahoo interview, it's like, oh, shit. Let's just do it general and put it in every market.
Was the fire just gone, Joe, working with Wahoo? Wahoo as the on-camera personality?
When Wahoo came back to the AWA, it was because he had a paycheck.
Okay.
It was, and it wasn't just Wahoo. I mean, there were a lot of the guys, especially the older guys. You throw even Ray Stevens into the mix at that point, where they're not going to go someplace else and work and make money. Their time has come and gone. They might work, but they're going to earn indie money, if you will. They were going through the motions at that point when they came back here for their end run. It was time for them to hang up the boots, but they didn't. And to me, it showed.
It's interesting too, thinking about Wahoo and Kurt. They had some strap matches towards the end there. And maybe it was Kurt that ignited Wahoo a little bit, to step the game up. But yeah, in terms of TV promos, I just don't recall a lot of fire and brimstone from Wahoo towards the end there. It was like, okay, let me go get the beer. Let me go have my beer. I'm done for the day. 8 to 5, and let me get out of here. But interesting choice. And again, these are all subjective, folks. I mean, you may think some of these people delivered the greatest promos in the world. We're talking a specific time frame, AWA, and I think we were pretty damn close on all counts.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up with some shout outs and then take it home. And because apparently Joe's got another job. I mean, I've got to rain out tonight, so I've got,
Well, I know I make millions off of this podcast, but
millions in pride. Go ahead, Nick.
The bar rag for $4.99. The bar rag episode that's gonna be the game changer.
I'm telling you guys, it's a conclusion. We talk about booking the story to the end. We have a solution. We have the end of the story. We finished our story.
You know what? I in order for me to be able to do the show
gimmick
tomorrow,
infringement. We finished the story.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I'm probably going to take a sleeping pill tonight just so I can get rested up for that big blockbuster back to ringside episode about bar rags. Hey, tomorrow. All right.
We will disappoint.
Shout out.
Yes.
Molly Dukic. I can't say enough wonderful things about Molly. Photographer extraordinaire. Here at the independent shows in and around the upper Midwest. She is a wonderful, wonderful lady. Personality plus, makes the best chocolate chip cookies anywhere, which is a big part of why she gets put over here. But I love Molly, and great to see her all the time. Shout out, kiddo.
Agreed on that. Shout out. My blind dart throw of the week actually comes by way of Mick Hart. She helped me out on this one. And it's our very faithful listener, Rusty Rex. Double R, baby.
Double R, absolutely. And Rusty Rex out there in the central states. Talk about a guy who's loyal to this podcast. We love the guy. Good call, Joe. Dart or not, it was a good call.
And I think that he actually does some indie work too. And he's always supporting indie. He's like, hey, show me what's going on in your area. So he's very much a part of the business, and I love it. Mine is going to Clayton Marshall, who is an avid follower, always commenting, always bringing ideas forward. Also follows us on Instagram to AWA Unleashed. So Clayton, here's to you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anything else that we need to do before we let Joe go to his real job?
No. We will let Ninja Joe go to the
Ninja Joe go.
Ninja Joe go. I just want to leave everybody with what we talked about last week. Remember, if you're a wrestling fan and a guy comes out in a black mask early on in the show and then comes out in a white mask later on, it is not the same guy. Do not be confused, even though he may look, sound, and wrestle the same. It's a different guy.
Hey, Mick, I got a question for you. So going on the theme of today's show.
Yeah.
Now, you are truly you're the voice of Minnesota wrestling.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
But for whatever reason, you never got the call to WWE or WCW. Why didn't you just go into your natural state and become a heel announcer? It would have been so easy for you.
You know me a long time, Chupik, and you know that I can't cut a promo worth of shit. And that's why, they didn't look at me. They just, heel or not, they didn't look at me. And I think you actually, considering how much Larry Nelson drank over the years and came out on camera and still cut a good promo, I think you could have been the next Larry Nelson for the AWA.
Yeah, but according to Larry, I was too ugly to be on camera. And I can't disagree with him. I mean, geez. But yeah, I still think you would have been great as the very first heel announcer.
I would have loved it. Let me tell you.
It's never too late.